Platformers have always felt right at home on Nintendo Switch, and the coming months promise a really busy period for the genre. In this lineup, I will show you the most anticipated platformers heading to Switch and Switch's why. Some of them come from familiar series, others bring fresh indie ideas, and a few stand out with a really unusual visual style. Let's start with the first one. Bubsy is finally coming back to full 3D after nearly 3 decades, and this return already feels like one of the boldest platformer experiments in a while. The project could go either way, but there is a real reason to pay attention, because the studio behind it is the same team that made Demon Turf, a platformer known for smooth movement and clever level design. That single detail changed the conversation around this revival completely. Recent gameplay previews show fast chain jumps, smooth gliding, and a spinning hairball form that lets Bubsy roll through speed-based sections. The design clearly supports speedrunning, with time trials, ghost challenges, and levels built around mastering movement rather than just reaching the end. This adds replay value and keeps each stage feeling fresh.
Are you ready?
See? Now this is what I'm talking about.
Teeto looks like a small but charming indie platformer that could easily win people over once they try it. The visuals give off a cheerful cartoon feel, but the main mechanic is what truly makes it unique. You control a small blob-shaped hero traveling alongside a bunny companion, and the core idea is absorbing objects from the world to shift into different forms that help you solve puzzles or get past obstacles. Recent gameplay clips show a lot of creativity in how these transformations actually work. You are not just picking up items, you physically reshape your character using whatever the environment offers, which means your abilities keep changing as you move forward. One moment you squeeze through a narrow tunnel, and soon after you turn heavy enough to activate switches or break through walls. This constant change keeps exploration from feeling repetitive.
Holy
Shut up!
Oh god, this isn't my specialty! Hold on, Teeto!
Mariachi Legends is shaping up as a Metroidvania that celebrates classic genre design while bringing a bold cultural identity that sets it apart from anything else in the space. Rather than using the typical gothic castles or sci-fi hallways, the game is set in stylized environments inspired by Mexican folklore and traditions, giving it a look and mood unlike most platformers around. The gameplay focuses strongly on tight combat and steady progression. You play a detective who makes a supernatural pact, which lets him turn into a powerful spirit warrior, unlocking new skills and gradually opening more of the world. The combat design leans into fast and aggressive action, with parries, finishing moves, and a mix of weapons ranging from blades to magical techniques. Fans of Hollow Knight or Blasphemous will feel right at home, though this game carves its own path through its use of music, myth, and visual style. Lifted has the kind of story-driven puzzle setup that tends to quietly build a dedicated following on Nintendo platforms, particularly if the emotional side of the story lands as strongly as the previews suggest. The idea is simple but striking. A young boy accidentally gets pulled into a strange experiment run by a professor, and from there he starts traveling through time using an elevator that jumps between different eras. That setup gives the game a clear identity, since the puzzles are not limited to one world, but spread across many historical periods, each with its own mechanics and art direction. What really stands out in the latest previews is how cinematic the presentation feels. This is not a basic puzzle platformer with simple stages. Every scene feels carefully staged, almost like a guided ride with strong pacing and smooth transitions.
For you, however,
Where the sands will shift under our very feet, where down is back and oh!
Crowsworn is one of the most eagerly awaited indie Metroidvanias out there, and every new piece of footage reminds people why the hype is so high. The first thing that grabs attention is the style. The world blends gothic horror with dark fairy tale design, and you can feel the influence of Hollow Knight and Bloodborne right away. The developers have openly named those as inspirations, and it clearly shows in the animations and enemy designs. Recent updates revealed that the project expanded far beyond the original scope, which is why development took longer than planned. Instead of pushing out the game early, the team added more content, including dozens of bosses, over 100 enemy types, and deeper side systems. Combat looks especially strong, built around a scythe for close-range strikes and twin firearms for ranged attacks, while magic abilities powered by a resource called Malice bring another layer of strategy. The Eternal Life of Goldman is turning into one of the most visually striking platformers headed to Nintendo systems, and the latest gameplay reveals pushed interest to another level. The world is drawn frame by hand, with a look that sits between classic European animation and modern indie platformers. What caught many players off guard recently is how intense and action-packed the gameplay actually is. Some of the new boss fights look dramatic and surprisingly dark, with creature designs that contrast sharply with the bright, colorful environments. The story follows an older adventurer exploring a strange group of islands tied to twisted folklore and legendary creatures. Instead of relying on conventional weapons, your main tool is a cane that can be upgraded with new parts, giving you fresh abilities that expand both exploration and combat.
The venerable reanimated museum exhibit. Every trivial excursion were transformed into a series of really defeat anyone with that funny little cane.
Fallen Tier. The Ascension is an ambitious indie adventure that mixes Metroidvania exploration with deep RPG storytelling, and it has been picking up more attention as development moves toward its full release. The world of Rawa looks enormous, filled with lost civilizations, ancient ruins, and mysterious gods that feel straight out of a large-scale fantasy anime. You play as a young hero named Hira, and the gameplay is not only about fighting enemies, but also about forming bonds with companions who change how you move through the world. That approach gives the game a different rhythm than something like Hollow Knight, where you usually rely only on your own skills. Recent updates confirm the game is already available in early access with a large amount of content, including multiple regions, several bosses, and many recruitable allies. Castlevania Belmont's Curse feels like a real return to form for the legendary vampire hunting series, and the recent gameplay reveals showed this is far more than a nostalgia pitch. The story takes place in medieval Paris, where monsters suddenly swarm the city, and a new Belmont descendant picks up the iconic vampire killer whip to fight through streets, towers, and massive Gothic castles. The setup respects the classics while bringing in modern mechanics. A recent trailer highlighted how closely movement and combat tie into the whip itself. It is no longer just a weapon. You can swing across gaps, string together aerial combos, and mix weapons and abilities in fast-paced fights. The teams working on the game include studios known for sharp action design, which explains why the combat already feels quick and responsive.
Scaling the sacred spires of Notre Dame, descending into them again. Together, we're continuing our collaboration for the fourth. Raisin baguettes are missing, but I think you've had enough of that already. And what?
Ayasa Shadows of Silence grabs attention right away because its world does not look like a typical platformer at all. The story unfolds in a surreal place called the Inverted World, a land that once lived in harmony but slowly fell into darkness after losing its balance between light and shadow. You play as Ayasa, a young survivor chosen to carry pieces of lost power through 6 symbolic lands, each representing emotions such as hope, greed, betrayal, and faith. The concept feels deeper than most platformers, closer to an interactive fairy tale with philosophical themes. The latest impressions focus on how much the gameplay relies on atmosphere and mechanics built around light and shadow. Kumarn the Wandering Spirit carries that heavy, unsettling tone that atmospheric horror fans on Nintendo systems tend to enjoy. The game is built around Southeast Asian folklore, which makes it feel different from the usual Western ghost stories we see all the time. You play as Kumarn, a childlike spirit who was once worshipped at a shrine, but now finds himself lost in a strange world filled with restless ghosts, haunted villages, and forgotten temples. The concept feels heavily narrative-driven, almost like a spiritual cousin to Little Nightmares, but the cultural setting makes everything feel unfamiliar and harder to predict. Recent announcements made it clear that the game focuses on stealth and puzzle survival rather than direct combat.
Washed a spider out. Itsy-bitsy spider.
Pocket Wheels feels like pure childhood nostalgia, the kind of concept that clicks instantly the moment you see a tiny toy car speeding across a giant living room floor. What makes it more interesting is that it is not just a racing game. It is a full 3D platforming adventure where driving is only part of the experience. You explore a whole house turned into a massive playground, with each room acting like its own world full of objectives, collectibles, and creative race challenges. A major recent update brought significant improvements to the public demo. The developers added a proper tutorial, a small hub area, and a brand new level with extra races and new exploration routes. The sound design received a big upgrade too, making the vehicles feel more alive and satisfying to control, which matters a lot in a game so focused on movement.
Unlock new rides! Okay! Pocket Wheels, tiny rides, grand adventure, lock new rooms!
Why is there a dinosaur? We're just ignoring this now, huh?
Kitsune. The journey of Adashino has been steadily gaining attention thanks to its blend of Japanese folklore, eerie atmosphere, and emotional storytelling. You play as a fox girl who wakes up on a mysterious island filled with glowing lanterns, torii gates, and abandoned shrines. The world itself looks hauntingly beautiful, almost dreamlike, and light becomes your main defense against the darkness creeping in from every direction. The floating lights scattered across the island are central to survival, exploration, and puzzle solving. One of the more interesting systems shown in recent trailers is the split between exploration and escape sequences. During exploration, you move through villages and sacred places, relighting shrines to unlock new paths and meet strange residents. Nocturnal's Y is shaping up as a much larger and more ambitious experience than the original, and the developers clearly have fans of classic Metroidvania adventures in mind. The story takes you to the mysterious city of Ayasa, a once glorious place now consumed by darkness, where you play as a warrior carrying a living flame that serves as your main survival tool. Every movement, fight, and puzzle is built around keeping that flame alive while pushing deeper into the cursed world. One of the biggest changes is how much more the game expands exploration compared to the original. Instead of short and linear stages, the sequel offers a full interconnected world filled with hidden routes, secret endings, and optional discoveries that reward curiosity. Bullet Age brings that old-school arcade energy Nintendo fans usually enjoy, especially if you like co-op platformers that combine shooting and sword combat into one chaotic experience. The setting is a ruined world called New Haven, destroyed by a mutagen disaster that turned both wildlife and soldiers into monstrous enemies. You join a resistance group fighting against the Empire responsible for the catastrophe, and the recent gameplay previews show fast, colorful action with constant movement. One detail that really stands out is the hybrid combat system. Instead of choosing between melee or ranged, the game actively pushes you to switch between sword strikes and gun attacks. Weapons can be upgraded with special components that change how bullets behave, giving the system more depth than it first appears. Manairons is one of those quirky 3D platformers that stands out thanks to its unusual setting. Instead of fantasy castles or futuristic cities, the game takes place in a mountain region inspired by Pyrenean folklore, where magical beings called Manairons live among industrial machines that have started to disrupt their peaceful land. You play as Nai, a small but determined creature who wakes up after centuries trapped inside a magical artifact and sets out to restore balance. What makes the recent reveals especially interesting is the blend of traditional platforming with music-based puzzle mechanics. Nai uses a flute to guide other Manairons, solve environmental puzzles, and interact with the machinery taking over the landscape.
No more